how you maintain the health of your team. Because suppose you take a new project and you think it will be done in 6 months with 6 people, and your management comes and says, no, we want it in 2 months and you'll get 2 people only. So how
Yeah.
you maintain the health of your team?
Yes. That's such a powerful question and a hard one. I
Yeah.
mean,
And it happens
I
everywhere.
try to, yeah, it happens everywhere. So the the first thing that I try to do, right, is make sure that we have, I would say stand-ups, of course, but weekly. I, I like to have like some sense of how the projects are doing, right? And if there is a deadline and I can only put like a limited amount of people on that project, the very next thing you should try to negotiate is scope, right? Of course. I mean, that's so how can you reduce scope or how can we break it down, this project in small deliverables, in small increments, right? And I would say between those two things is like, so let's go to the example that you said. Okay, we have this massive project, but we only have 2 engineers available. And the project needs to be delivered 6 months from now. But we know is a huge and there is a lot of risk, right? So the first thing that I would do is let's do an inception. Let's bring in not only the 2 engineers, let's bring in more senior engineers, more product folks, and let's try to break it down, this project into 6 slices, right? What is the first thing that needs to happen, the second thing, the third thing, and let's forget about the rest. And once we define that's the first thing that can be delivered, even if it cannot be released to the users, it can be deployed to production and we can enable for like a small percentage of users, whatever you can do, but you need to deploy to production, even if it's not enabled to the public, and even if it's only a tiny fraction of the overall scope. First goal is figure out the first slice and then focus all the energy on delivering that first slice and putting, I would say, certain like stop gaps in the middle where like every week you are reviewing the progress of the project and you are acting on things that are not working. That might mean escalating, that might mean kind of like temporarily allocating other folks part-time on that project, even though I'm not a big fan of that. Uh, but your first goal is to get that first slice out, right? And I strongly believe that you need multiple feedback loops to get something done on time. So the first kind of feedback loop you have is the daily stand-up. And that is where the engineering manager is seeing, are we progressing? And the second loop is the weekly report where we're kind of almost executive level report on the project, what was done this week, like how much of the vision have we done? And then kind of like the third level is the release or the monthly cadence where you're shipping something. And what I noticed, like doing projects over the last 15 years, is that if you're able to deliver the first slice of a big project, you are almost mitigating 50% of the risk already. And a lot of times, if you're able to deliver the first or the second chunk of the project, most of the business goals are going to already be satisfied by then. So I think the biggest misconception when, oh, there is this big project, we only have this amount of people, is trying to do all at once or trying to have a single release or like, okay, we have 6 months, so we're going to take 6 months. You're only going to deliver something and get feedback and iterate on the month 6, right? That's the biggest mistake. And also try to like not have, I would say, someone managing that project directly with the engineers, facilitating the conversation across the different partners you might have on that project, across like everything that needs to happen, right? So I think that's like, if you can have 2 engineers, but have someone that is more opening the path and kind of unblocking them as soon as the problems happen, I think you can do wonders in 6 months, right? Even if you only have 2 people. But it's hard to say in the abstract, right?
True,
But I would
true.
say my techniques would be around one of those 2 ideas, right?
Right.
Reduce scope, break it down scope, try to have small deliverables in between, especially if they can be released to users, collect metrics, right? It's like daily, weekly, monthly feedback.
Right.
And act on the first level feedback that's broken. Okay, we know that something is off. Let's try to act as soon as we know that. Let's not delay, oh, okay, we still have time. And like,
True.
no, let's really, really kind of like be following that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is a very important point. that don't just agree with the management because they will try to force you without understanding the complexity. It's important to push back. And as you gave this advice, which is very important, to try to come somewhere in the midway, break the features, break the product, and say how much we'll deliver, and just don't try to kill the team to deliver the whole thing.
Yes.
Very, very important.
And another thing that I didn't mention is like really understand why. Like,
Yeah.
why is it important to the business to get this done in 6 months, right?
Right.
Is there a lot of times I found that most deadlines are flexible, right? Unless if they're attached to some legal requirement or
Right.
some things. But a lot of times is someone high up is setting a deadline because in the past they got burned and things didn't happen, right? So they're just saying, I want this because I'm not seeing anything. So I say, okay, I want this in June. That's it. Because he or she is not seeing the progress. But the moment you start showing something,
Right.
it's so much easier to get extension. If they see that thing growing, if you are
Yes.
communicating, right? It's so easy. If you are ahead of time, you're raising issues. You're saying there is a problem here. We are operating understaffed. And you kind of you build that trust that also matters at that level.
Right.
You can also do wonders by kind of like showing progress. That's why I say like weekly demos, like monthly, where people are seeing what's done and they can feedback on that. Not only 6 months surprise.
Yeah.
The idea of like the project is on green, and next day is red, right?
True.
There is no yellow.
True. So you brought another very important point. I want to underline it, highlight it, which is ask why. In fact, I tell all my devs even they should always ask why. Why are we doing this? Program manager or product manager come and ask, give me this feature. Should always ask why, and we all should understand why we are doing it. Even if you are the junior most dev, don't just start doing because they told you. You should ask why, and it makes a huge difference. And I have so many stories around this in Microsoft. I hired his name is Dooney. He came. I hired him out of college, and first or second day he came and he started asking me why. And within 3 months, he became a leader because he was fearless. He was walking in the office of the GM and asking him why. And it's such a good learning I got out of him that always push on this, why we are doing this. Awesome. Thank you very much. That's a good tip.
There is another, there is a book that was heavily influential on me. It's called Impact Mapping. And it is a book about trying to do a mind map out of the project, but is a really powerful technique where you kind of you try to figure out you try to figure out the different ways. It's almost a graph because it's almost like every time that I see a proposed solution, that's not the only solution to address the business goal or to get what is. So if you're able to, it's almost like, okay, if a solution comes designed to you, okay, we should build this feature to increase, let's say, the engagement of users by 5% to allow this certain thing. The question that you should ask is like, okay, is that the only way to achieve that thing? You go like 2 levels up, right? And you start to understand what is the business impact. It's such a powerful tool, impact mapping. Look at it's like a really short book from this guy that is super passionate about the topic. It's called Goiko Adzik. He's based in the UK, and he has another book that's amazing called Specification by Example, and it's about decomposing the why in the metrics, and then putting on a graph where you can see, okay, there's option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's even an option that does not require building software.
Right.
It might be using something that's already available. It's like expanding the scope of options you have to achieve that certain thing. It's exercise that's rare to see.
Right.
A lot of people just take for granted, okay, we need to build this feature. Here's the design.
Right.
And instead of asking why or really understand what's the outcome, what are the things, and is that the only solution?
Perfect. I will put the book detail in the show notes. So Thiago, next question I have.